Definitely. And I hope it leads to some progress. And you mentioned like the majority of football players, especially, it's coming from poor neighborhoods, mostly black. Like, and I've heard, I'm a Pat McAfee fan, and he says all the time, the locker room is one of the most diverse workplaces on the planet. It does. Do you think that the introduction of this NIL stuff is more of like, will unite a locker room and even more, and just say like their teammates will be like, hey, go get your bag, go do what you got to do? Or I've heard also the opposite from other people is, other analysts like myself, is like it'll just create tension, and some guys aren't going to want to work out because they're just getting all this money. Like, do you think that this is going to affect the locker room or unite it
Right.
more than anything?
So first of all, yeah, man, I like Pat McAfee. I think he brings a perspective that's needed. It was interesting because he's somebody who broke away, did his own thing, and even a year ago when I first started watching him in 2019, before he forgot like super huge, he was decent then. I checked him today, 1.4 million on Instagram. Him, a guy named Sal Vetri. These are all people you need to pay attention to because Sal Vetri's a Penn State guy. Has a, I don't know if you heard of him before. Has a YouTube daily fantasy channel. It's pretty good. But as far as again, those divisions in the locker room, they already exist. The people in the locker room who have more notoriety, they already get things that the other people don't, right? It's already here. Human nature is already amongst us. If you are the starting running back and you just had your second 1,000-yard season, you're going to get things that the other players do not. That's already happening. So it could, and the second thing is, we could have had this solved if the NCAA wasn't busy stealing all the money with the universities, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an equivalent to when your mother's leaving for the day, she tells you, hey, take the meat out of the freezer and thaw it for dinner. But you forget up until like 30 minutes before she gets back. And you're like, oh, crap. Now they have to take the steak and throw it in the oven on 500 degrees. You understand what it is?
Yeah.
If you would have developed a system and a plan for this, we would have been able to work things out. Now, I can promise you, dude, over the next year or so, it's going to be lumps and bumps and problems that come in the system because that's what happens when you're trying to implement anything new, right? But if we can give 170 million, 200 million people internet every single day wirelessly so they can talk to each other like this without having like a collapse of our country, we can give all them electricity. Somehow we all have drinking water. If you ever really think about the complex systems that this country is made up of, please don't tell me that there is no way to fairly compensate players for what they earn. A big misnomer of this is, oh, they can get paid now. It's like, no, if you've earned that, you can get paid. Yeah. That's what the point is of America. So they say, but we know that America is a country of, we write, just because we wrote it down doesn't mean we have to follow it. It should have been the same. Capitalism is about opportunity. It's not about a guarantee. It's about a chance. And if Reggie Bush is the most popular player in the country, which he was, there's no ground to stand on to say that he didn't deserve that and more. But greed and corporate interest, and definitely a desire to keep large amounts of cash out of the hands of young Black kids, if you want to say it, it is what it is. Those are powerful factors. So now, in order for us to switch our mindset to say, look, this isn't a handout, but if, for example, you earn all conference or you earn all American, right? Look at the footage that every single school gets out of their drafted players. You're going to see that footage for the next 8 months. They still show Tim Tebow's speech where he's getting everybody fired up. You know what I mean? So how much is that worth? 10 years later.
And it just blows my mind that the NCAA, for whatever reason, they're going through this NIL reform and they refuse to give Reggie Bush his Heisman and give him all his vacated stats and records. Like, how? Like,
because you have to admit you were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, it's so dumb because I want college athletics to be fun and be successful. I want everyone to get their own bag. Do what you got to do. I have no problem with that at all, especially when you're the players on the field, on the court, whatever. But when it repeatedly feels like the NCAA is just messing up and taking one step forward, two steps back, it's like, You're just give the guy. He founded YouTube highlights. Reggie Bush started YouTube highlights. You need him to be an asset, especially USC. USC has not really recovered since. And they had 1 good year, 2 good years with Sam Darnold. But other than that, USC needs a guy like Reggie Bush. These are all abstract stats and records that, like, in the grand scheme of things, it's like, who is the greatest college football running back, whatever. But, like, just give it to him. Give it to him. You've already admitted you're wrong with this NIL stuff. Just wipe the slate clean and just move forward. Because what is possibly giving Reggie Bush his Heisman back going to do, like, financially? I don't think it's going to do much. The guy played in 2003 or whatever. Like,
instead, they doubled down. They rehired Mark Emmert. Like, the NCAA is the prime example of, I'm wrong, but I've been loud and wrong in this way for so long that I don't know how to pivot.
Yeah, and I don't want to say I'm.
And I'd rather die than adapt, and that's fine. The NCAA needs to, in my opinion. I mean, listen, Mark Emmert's making over $1 million a year. The NCAA is an organization who is done very well off of the business of amateur athletics. So it's almost like there's only so long that you can pretend that March Madness doesn't make $1 billion in a month, because it does. 30 days, $1 billion.
It's nuts. And, like, especially March Madness type, when March Madness comes around every year, that's 95% of NCAA's revenue is those broadcasting rights.
Yeah.
CBS and Turner and all these other broadcasting companies are shelling out billions of dollars to broadcast these games day round, day in and day out. And it's like, you mean to tell me that Chris Jenkins in 2016 couldn't get a piece of that after he made a historic moment that gets replayed in package after package after package every tournament year? It just doesn't make any sense.
You couldn't get away with this in any other workplace, because that's what it is, employer-employee scenario. And think about it, in America, where else could you get away with that? You couldn't. So you do this thing that makes money, but we have decided arbitrarily that you are not in a position to be compensated for it. So all of the revenue goes to us. It's almost like that doesn't really make sense anywhere, any way you slice it. But again, that's the reality. What were you going to say?
So you mentioned it's like employee-employer relationship.
Right.
Do you, like, Northwestern already tried this way
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Shout out to Northwestern, man. They tried to form a player union, and again, the powers that be came together and snuffed it out.
Was it
this time the government and the NCAA joined hands?
But wasn't the government saying, I could be completely wrong about this, but wasn't the government saying, like, we're not going to say no, but we're not going to say yes?
Right. And a lot of times the government will do that, but it's like, well, we're not going to say that you have standing as like a unit, because you need standing in court to bring a cause of action, right? So they're not saying, they basically gave them like hey, we can't determine whether you have that or not. And it's like, I'm not saying that you can't get to California tomorrow, but you can do everything but fly. It's like, all right, well, I guess I could drive technically, but it's, you know what I mean? It's basically crippling anything that I have before it gets started. And I'd have to look back on the merits of that case. But essentially they said that you guys can't form a union because, you don't have that right. You don't have standing, like you guys aren't employees. And like I said, I'd have to brush back up on the details, but there you go. This isn't a new problem. But with the current change in America right now, the current climate is very, very partisan, more than it ever has been, more divided. And people are also reflecting on statutes. People are reflecting on laws and saying, this has been here for a long time, but is it the most equitable solution? Does this make the most sense for the most amount of people? And of course, don't get it right every time, but that question is being asked more and more. So you're seeing certain things being challenged, and you're seeing a different societal approach to certain issues like this that have been glaring for a long time. I mean, Jalen Rose talking about during the Fab Five, they would have to put their money together just to go to Taco Bell. Meanwhile, these are the most popular basketball players in the country at the time, so it's like they don't, I know that I said that people don't want money in the hands of young Black kids, but how about just enough to get food after they've made your university $10 million? You get what I mean? So it very much was something that was so unequal that we have a habit in America of, just because it's been around for a while, we just, yeah, it's cool, I guess. But this isn't new. This has been glaring before you were even born or you were even conceived. So it's an issue that we're finally addressing, man. But it's so much. I mean, look at NCAA, the video game, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And there's so many different things that you're like, man, this is crazy. Terrell Pryor, Ohio State, they gave away their Sugar Bowl sign memorabilia because they wanted to get tattoos, $300-400, couldn't afford them. You're giving away priceless things to you, so it's like, and then you take their names. Terrell Pryor is the third leading passer at Ohio State.